Good evening, my dear colleagues. Welcome to another Inget Zoom Serious Talk. Today, our guest is Altamirano. Annie, who holds an MA in ELT and Applied Linguistics from the University of London, is an international speaker, trainer, and author based in Spain. Annie has given teacher training workshops in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, and for many years, she served as a Cambridge English Language Assessment presenter and a mentor in the Cambridge Teacher Support Service. As an author, she has worked with a wide range of publishers and written materials for children and adolescents. She is the vice president of TESOL Spain, with which Inget has recently become a sister association. We are so proud. The title of her talk this evening is How to Effectively Help Students Reach Their Full Potential. Thank you, dear Annie, for being with us, and welcome again. The screen is all yours.
Thank you, Aidan, and thank you, Ingrid, for for inviting me to give this talk, and thank you all for being here this evening. Now, I'm going to share my screen. Let me see here. And no, I was checking. There we are. Okay. I was checking the slides before and I forgot to put them back in the beginning. All right, so how can we effectively help students reach their full potential and not have a problem in between? Let's see. A classroom reality that challenges our capacity to teach inclusively as we want and as we need is the variety of learners that surrounds us every day. Some come to us with highly developed skills, others with a wide range of challenges. Some come from different contexts, different cultures. So no matter what their differences are, all the students have valuable contributions to make, and they can learn from each other to truly be better together. So, to support this, we can implement an instructional approach called differentiated instruction. However, there are some misconceptions around what differentiated instruction is. Many people think that differentiated instruction is provided individualized instruction to each of the learners. No. That's not what differentiated instruction is about. So let's see. Let's have a look at what differentiated instruction is. Differentiated instruction is never, to begin with, it's never something that we just add on to a lesson accidentally. It's something that runs throughout what we do as teachers through the planning phase, the teaching phase, and the assessment phase. Therefore, it's what we do to help students make progress regardless their starting points. It's ensuring that all learners, no matter their ability, their interests, or their context, have the support and the scaffolding they need to meet or to exceed the learning objectives. Some time ago, I came across this gentleman. He's Maori from New Zealand. His name is Kerry Opai. He's a strategic lead at an association, a foundation rather, where he helps students, autistic students. And the Maori word for autism is takiwatanga, which means in their own time and space. And I found this word and the meaning of this word in Maori so descriptive of what differentiated instruction is that I decided to include it in my talks. So it's Takiwatanga, that is differentiated instruction. If you want to learn more about him, I have included here the link to his organization. But I was really interested in this word and the definition. So, how can we start thinking about differentiated instruction in our lessons? Okay, first of all, we need to start looking at the classroom through the eyes of three broad categories of learners: advanced learners, learners in the middle, and learners who struggle. However, these categories are fluid, and learners can and do move among these three categories at different stages of their learning life and across subjects and skills. So let's have a look at the different categories. First of all, let's have a look at the advanced learners. Some learners may be advanced at the beginning of the course, but not later on. Some may be advanced all the time, but not on all aspects or learning skills. We may consider some students advanced in the light of the context they live in. But because the primary aim of differentiated instruction is to maximize the potential of our learners, when we see or we sense that a child can learn or a teenager can learn more deeply or move at a faster pace, we have to offer them more advanced opportunities. So advanced learners, like all learners, need help in developing their potential, because unchallenged students can become mentally lazy even if they do well. There is scientific evidence that the brain loses tone and capacity if it's not used vigorously, and that's in the same way as muscles do. So, if a student produces success without effort, potential brain power can be lost. Also, they may fail to develop valuable life skills, study skills, and coping skills. Because students who get good grades without learning to work hard, when they are confronted with the need to study hard or to persist in spite of failure or uncertainty, they become frustrated and even resentful, and they think that they are no good. They may also fail to develop a sense of self-efficacy, which comes from trying hard to achieve your goals, right? So they share the same needs of all students, in a way. We need to help them set high goals, devise plans to achieve those high goals, and very importantly, learn to manage and tolerate frustration and devise plans to achieve their goals. So how can we help them? Here we have some principles. Challenge advanced children, and I mean children and I mean students in general, yes? Particularly focusing on children and teenagers, because adults are quite likely to have developed these abilities, yes, or coping abilities. And if they haven't, by the time they are adults, it's quite difficult that we are going to be able to change them. So let's focus on children and teenagers. So start by continually raising expectations so that they can compete with their own possibilities. Also, increase support to match the ceilings of expectations. That is, when tasks are appropriately challenging, these students will need support and scaffolding just as the others do. Emphasize pride in quality work and satisfaction in struggling. That is, this is called establishing an ethics of excellence. And this is something that they will need in their life as competent citizens. Help them to know how to achieve quality. Teach them that finishing first doesn't necessarily mean that they have done quality work. And teach them what quality work means so that they can recognize it. And balance rigor and joy in learning. That is, make sure that they find pleasure in what they are learning. Otherwise, we know that they are not going to persist in their efforts. Then we have the struggling learners. Now, labels are quite tricky with struggling learners also, because, let me see. There we are. Because it has this term struggling learner sometimes for me has kind of negative connotation. Sometimes we call them slow learners. It may have the connotation of being lazy, while lots of them are not. They work hard and conscientiously, but still they struggle. Sometimes they are called at-risk learners, which overlooks the part of these students that may be at promise instead of at risk. Why look at the negative and not at the potential positive? So just like an advanced learner, the profile of a struggling learner may shift over time and across skills. And many of those learners may be quite accomplished or proficient in talents that schools sometimes treat as secondary. For example, leadership, technical or manual ability, creativity. So we can have a look at some ideas, yes, that we can use to help learners, these kind of learner, maximize their capacities. Believe in their capacities, even when they may not be evident immediately. Teach with a growth mindset. That is to say, from the belief that our most basic abilities are only at a starting point, and that dedication and sustained effort can greatly extend those abilities. Also, look for the struggling learners' positives. All children can do something right, and it's important to find those things. Affirm them in public and in private. It is said that students do better when they believe that the teacher is more committed to helping them than to catching them wrong. Another thing, remember that success brings success. Make sure that struggling learners spend some time every day doing things that are relevant to them and help them see themselves as powerful learners. Work for learning in context. Help the students see how what they are learning is relevant to their life. And go for powerful learning. If struggling learners can't learn everything, make sure they learn the big ideas, key concepts, or governing rules that will help them see the big picture of a topic. And teach up. That is, plan for advanced learners and then scaffold the strugglers on those same tasks. And now we have the third group, the ones in the middle. What happens with those students who are neither advanced or brilliant, and those who are struggling? They are okay. They don't seem to have difficulties. They don't seem extraordinary in any way. And they are quite likely to fall off the radar. Yet, among them, we may have some that just need a little nudge to shine academically. So these students are also waiting for someone, and that is you, the teacher, to signal that they are unique, special, and that there is no achievement beyond their reach. So we need to bear this in mind too. So it's important to understand that every human being needs to feel that they are unique and important. And this applies, what I'm going to say here applies to all kinds of learners, in fact. They are not better or worse than someone else, but they are valuable as the others. Pay attention to their signals about hopes, dreams, interests, and also, and very importantly these days, about their fears. Again, teach with a growth mindset, with your affirmation, support, and guidance. These children can grow and discover possibilities they were not aware of, probably. Teach productive habits of mind and work. Teach them and the others as well to ask for help when they need it, to set themselves goals, to use feedback. Helping our students dream is important, but it is equally important to teach them how to achieve those dreams. Again, teach up. Just like the strugglers, they need to escape from this middling curriculum. Challenge them. Teach them to be aspirational. That is, some students come from home where going to university is the normal thing to do. And they are university bound, let's say, from birth. Others don't have that family background. But it's important to convey to them that there are important options to consider for their futures and help them see how they can go about planning in those directions. So I think that it's important to bear these things in mind because they go beyond the curriculum. They go beyond the academic into the, let's say, the students' well-being, the students' growth, and the students' confidence, and helping them develop skills for life. Now, how can we differentiate? Let's see. At the heart of the practice of differentiation is the modification of three basic curriculum-related elements: content, process, and product. But these are by no means the only elements that we can differentiate. We can also differentiate by questioning, by pace, by grouping. And most of the times, these elements, all these elements, are used in combination. So let's begin by differentiating content. How do we differentiate content? There are two ways to think about differentiating content. We can think of it as adapting what we teach or what we want the students to learn, or as adapting how we give students access to what we teach or what we want them to learn. So first, we must identify what content is to be taught. And you can use a form. For example, this form, I mean, this is just a suggestion, of course. You can use a form to help you unpack a unit. And here, suppose that you use this. With this table, you can unpack a unit and look at it in 6 different ways. Don't just rely on what the book tells you the learning intentions or the learning objectives are. I mean, I am a teacher's book writer. I am a teacher trainer, and I have been a teacher for most of my life, for more than 30 years, a lot more than 30 years. So I can tell you what I used to tell my trainees in Argentina. Teachers' books are not written on stone. You can use, adapt, or ignore what's in them. And, for example, with learning intentions or learning objectives, as a teacher's book writer, I lay out the learning intentions at the beginning of each lesson. But then you may have your own agenda. I can't possibly imagine what the thousands of teachers using those books need to do in their lessons. I mean, I have this idea about what this lesson is about, but then you can and you should have your own agenda. So you take on the goals of the lesson and then you elaborate your own. Think in terms of can-do statements. Yes? So think about what you want the students to be able to do. And you can, for example, why students need to know this. Yes? Why should I teach them this? What processes do they need to learn in order to achieve the learning intentions? The details that students must learn, keep that to a minimum. Don't be overambitious, because then sometimes we are overambitious and we plan too much for a lesson, and then we are disappointed. We can be disappointed with the students because they couldn't cover all the topics, or disappointed with ourselves because we haven't been able to cover all the topics. And we are wrong on both aspects. What we have done is plan too much. So it's important. I have found, for example, now I am a full-time teacher trainer and writer, but even when I plan my teacher training sessions, I do this. It's very useful. I mean, perhaps not the vocabulary because I'm dealing with teachers, but sometimes with some aspects of the teaching, I want them to, for example, particularly with very novice teachers, with recently graduated teachers, or perhaps with student teachers. There is some meta language, some professional language that you may need to bring into the session. But this is normally not a very important part of my planning when I am doing teacher training sessions. But I do try to break a session down into these components, and you can do that with your lessons. Now, how can we differentiate the content? Okay, we have numerous ways in which we can do that. For example, we can use assessment tools. I'm going to show you one, and I'm sure that you know it. One that I love using, the KWL chart. I think this is really useful because it helps you identify the specific skills and concepts that students must achieve. So you find out or you assess what learners already know about a topic, and we can use this to assess what they have learned at the end of a lesson, for example. So suppose at the beginning of a lesson, what you do, you draw this table on the board. I usually draw it on a large sheet of paper that I can then put on one side and bring back at the end of the session. I also do this with trainees, I'm sorry. It's also useful for teacher training. So in the first column, students write what they know or they think they know about the topic. For example, suppose that you are working on a unit on dinosaurs. So you ask the students to write what they know or they think they know about the topic. In the second column, what I want to know, you ask them to write what they would like to learn in the form of questions. For example, after the lesson has finished or at the end of the unit, you bring this back to the center of attention and they review the questions in the what I learned column. So they look at the questions and they write in the what I learned column what they have learned about the topic. They see if the questions have been answered. Are any questions unanswered? Thinking back on the information they have learned, can they predict what the answers are going to be? Can they think of resources where they can find the answers to these questions? This can be used also as a kind of springboard for a project or a research piece of work. Another thing we can do is present the content in different ways. That is, you can have online resources, you can have books, worksheets, that is, different modes, visual elements. You will not only cater for different ways of learning, different styles of learning, but also it adds variety. And you can present the content in different levels also. You can divide a long text into manageable chunks. That is, particularly when you are working with listening or reading texts. You can have, for example, a reading comprehension text. Some students will be able, if it is long, or long for the level of the students, some students will be able to work with it as it is. Some other students won't be able to do that. So you can, instead of giving them the whole text, you ask them to work with paragraphs. So the amount of work is smaller. Eventually, they are going to finish off working with the whole text, but not in one go. Also, adapting texts. Texts using, for example, many a time we find texts that we like online or in newspapers, magazines, etc. Do people use magazines anymore? I don't know. Maybe just online materials. But anyway, but you're not sure if the level of the text is suitable for your students. You can use online tools in order to find out. I'm going to show you, let me see. Well, I have that slide a little bit later. There are some very good tools online that you can use and very easy to use. You just copy the text, you paste it there, and the tool will tell you the level of the text, and you will be able to change the words and adapt them. That is making it more challenging or less challenging depending on your students. Using different texts and resource materials, building a class library, providing scaffolding cards, I'm going to show you examples, and using note-taking organizers. The scaffolding cards are very simple. For example, suppose that your students have to do a speaking activity. Yes, they have to work in groups and they have to discuss the pros and cons of something. Before they start doing the activity, you can brainstorm with the class useful language that they can use. And then they can write that language down in their notebooks, or you can provide cards with those sentence beginnings so they can use those when they are doing the speaking activity. It is very simple, and here you can support struggling students with this. Another thing that you can do is using a working wall. I love working walls, especially now that we have so many tools online to make these working walls really interactive and interesting. This is a typical working wall, a traditional one, pen, paper, pictures. That is, at the start of the topic, it's like a KWL thing, only more visually attractive. So at the start of the topic, students can put up questions they would like to have answered. So when you look at the questions, you will gain a sense of the different levels of knowledge and interest from where the students are starting. Yes, they can also put examples of the things they already know. They can put pictures. So lots of things. And it's important that you put here, you share with them the learning intentions and the success criteria. You can also add labels for the different levels of complexity as they collect information about the topic. Yes. And also you can use the working wall as an extension task for fast finishers. Another way of doing that, if you're teaching online or if you want to add something different to the class, you can use Padlet. Padlet is wonderful for this because you have the board there and students can, you give them a link and they can add their own notes, pictures, links, references. It works in the same way as a physical working wall. Then, for example, when students have to do a piece of writing, what you can do is vary the degrees of complexity that you require from the students. One of the things that we need to bear in mind when we talk about differentiated instruction is that all learners will be working towards the same success criteria. All of them will have to meet the same objectives. The different thing is the road, but the end line, the finishing line should be the same. That's very important because it's not about giving more, the stronger students, the students we perceive to be more confident, more difficult work, and the others easier work. No. It's about giving scaffolding to those who need it and giving challenge to those who need it. But all of them should be working towards the same goals. So, for example, if they have to write a piece of text, you can vary the degrees of complexity, and in this way, they are, for example, they have to write a story about something that happened. You give them a piece of narrative to write. How can you differentiate doing this? For example, varying the number of words used. Some students will have to write 100 words. I'm inventing this, of course. Some other students 120, some other students 160. You decide. The length of the words used. Some students will use shorter words, some others will use longer words. The complexity of the thinking behind the vocabulary that they are using. Some students will use pretty or nice. Some others will use awesome, beautiful. The punctuation that they use. The complexity of the sentence types. You can say, for example, okay, when you write your narrative, you need to include at least 2 complex sentences. Or 2 sentences that contain relative clauses, if they don't know what a complex sentence is. Or 2 conditional sentences. So you vary the complexity, the level of complexity of the sentences and the amount of development of ideas. More confident students will develop their ideas more. The others will not develop the ideas so much. Maybe. You never know. Because sometimes some struggling learners may struggle, for example, with speaking, but they can be very good at writing narratives. I remember when I was a student at a teacher training college, we had a teacher who used to come, the teacher of language, in language 1. The teacher would come into the room, look out of the window and say, today write 200 words about clouds. What? So imagine no brainstorming, no gathering ideas, no nothing. Just write 250 words about the clouds. Some of my classmates went bonkers. They were excellent at phonetics, for example. I hated phonetics all my teacher training college. I was never interested in that. But some of them were fabulous in phonetics. They all had flying colors. Others were fabulous in, I don't know, history of the language. But I have always loved reading. So quite quickly, I looked out of the window and I started writing, and I could write 250 words about the clouds. I wasn't the best student in phonetics, but I could write very good narratives. To this day, I write quite good stories. So many a time, it was me writing 3 or 4 stories at the same time. But as you see, I wasn't good in one thing, but I was good in another. And sometimes we may find that a student who struggles perhaps with the grammar, and we can then go back to how we correct a composition. That is another, it's meat for another webinar. So we have a look at what they write, and they are fantastic stories, even if they make mistakes. Mm-hmm. So, as you can see, we may have students who are very good at writing, yes, and not so good at other things. But the amount of development of ideas will also vary, yes. Let's see, the next thing I wanted to show you, worksheets. Worksheets at 3 levels of difficulty. Right now, precisely, I am writing worksheets for a book. What is this? It's the same exercise. This is the key. The same exercise with 3 different levels of scaffolding. You don't need anything more than 3 levels of challenge. So you have, for example, students need practice, or you want to give them extra practice of coordinating conjunctions. Good. The first worksheet, this is one exercise of the 3 that I usually include in the worksheets. So in the first one, we have the rule of use, that is, why we use them, what we use them for. And they have to choose between 2. One of them is correct. Mm-hmm. So they have to choose. In worksheet B, they have the rule, and here they have the conjunctions. Now, here they already have a choice between 2, but here they have to decide between 4. And, and the last one has no support. So this would be for struggling students, let's say. This would be for the ones in the middle, and this is the one that has the least support. So here I have only part of the rule, and they have to complete with the correct conjunction. This is a very simple example, yes, but this is the way in which you can differentiate. So you see that it is exactly the same exercise, but with different levels of scaffolding. That's the point of differentiation. It's not giving them different exercises, but different levels of support. I told you before about editing texts. So here you have some useful links that I usually use. Well, I usually used, I can say, I sometimes use them, I sometimes still use them, just to check certain words. But they are very useful tools. As I say, you just copy paste and it will tell you the level of the text, the level of the words, if they are C1, B1, B2, whatever, and you can change them. Or you can use Chat GPT, the monster. Artificial intelligence is going to kill us all. Okay, these are two texts I have created using ChatGPT. What I did was I told ChatGPT to write a text of X number of words at level A1 for 12-year-olds. And it gave me this. It was a text about wild animals, and I gave it the same instructions only for A2. And it gave me the two texts at two different levels. Of course, then you will have to look at it, see if it is okay. I mean, it's not magic. It's not infallible. Yes. I have been cheating ChatGPT also. The other day, I asked ChatGPT to write a poem. About the summer with references to the sea. I gave it some really careful details. Oh, it was rubbish what it wrote. It was absolute rubbish. So it's very useful for some things, but for others, it's not infallible. The human touch is always there. So you can also, as I said, you can also adapt. You can take the text, put it in ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to summarize the text at a certain level, and then you can edit it. It will save you a lot of time. And as you can see, you can give the students the same text about wild animals, but with different levels of difficulty. Now, what about the process? Differentiating the process. How can we differentiate process? Now, when students encounter new ideas, new information, new skills, they need time to make sense of these materials before the materials become theirs. So this making sense or processing is how students come to understand the content. And of course, this is an essential component of learning. So process is quite often referred to as an activity. But I think it's better to define it as a sense-making activity, because an effective activity is essentially a sense-making process, and it's designed to help learners progress from their current point of understanding to a more complex level. So, let's see. Here we have some strategies to differentiate process, and I'm sure that you have used all of them. Because these are standard practice. Yes, maybe we have been using them all our lives, all our teaching lives, without knowing that we were differentiating the process. But they are really things that we do all the time. Yes. Now, for example, we can have vocabulary man. This is wonderful for kids, but you can adapt it and also make it suitable for teenagers. Yes. So in each part of vocabulary man, you have an activity. Yes, a different activity. Here it's vocabulary only, but you can change it and make it grammar man if you like. Or instead of a person, put a dinosaur or whatever. You create the theme depending on what you want to do. So in each part of the body, you have an activity. If you wish, you can give each activity points and tell the students that they can choose any activity or activities, but they need to add up to a certain number of points. And another thing that we need here is that the activity is very, very clear and written in a very simple way, because of course you cannot put very long instructions. So you can, they can choose these activities. Also, another option is the inquiry boards or learning menus. These have been around for a lifetime. For example, here you have an example. Again, you have a graphic organizer. This is a table, a simple table. It can be, it can have as many as, oh, here is it. Sorry, it should be 9 here, not 8. You have 9 squares, but you can make it smaller, depending, that is, you create your own inquiry board. Again, each activity is explained here. There are different levels of difficulty or complexity, and students can progress through the activities in chronological order, or they can jump from one to the other. That's up to them. Again, if you wish, you can assign points to the activities or not. And for example, right now, we have lots of other possibilities, because we can create inquiry boards or learning menus that are interactive using different apps that we have online. Flipgrid, for example, I have tried Flipgrid, I have tried Word Wall, Book Widget, and Wakelet, for example, word clouds. Word clouds are fun. Usually students are quite adept at using these apps. So they will find it much more fun than simply working with a piece of paper. And these are also, they have the potential of being more creative, of letting them do more things, right? So the key here again is to have a short, clear, and very well-defined description of what they have to do, and make it clear to them whether they can choose the order in which they are going to do the activities, or you decide the order. That's, again, that's your choice. Then we have a product. That is, we could go also into more things, but I mean, we just have 1 hour. So let's see how we can differentiate by product. Now, what is a product? Product is what the students generate at the end of a significant span of learning. It can be at the end of a unit, at the end of a lesson, or at the end of a term. That depends. And it requires the students to apply and extend what they have learned. Products can vary a lot in terms of complexity. For example, again, here we have types of products. Come on, I bet you have used all of them. Those are products. The things that we ask our students to do, the projects, those are the products, right? Now, they can, as I said, they can vary in complexity. You have a range, you can have a range of different types of complexities, but they should have a clear academic criteria and have to be clearly aligned with the learning targets. They are important because they represent the students' knowledge, the skills, their understandings, and the application of all those. And they are very good ways of assessing our students. Now, if you will allow me, I can give you some tips for developing high quality product assignments. First of all, decide on the format or formats the product will take. Sometimes the requirements of the curriculum shape the product, but even if you can decide on 2 or 3 options and differentiate further by inviting the students to suggest alternative options that may be of particular interest to them. Determine baseline expectations for quality. Clarify what they should pursue in regard to the content, how they should work, what indicators of quality they should work towards. It's a good idea to build a checklist before they begin, to build a checklist of what a good product should look like. And then they can use that checklist to assess their own work. And here we are incorporating self-assessment and peer assessment. Also, determine how you will support your students. For example, brainstorming ideas to present the product, arranging peer consultation and editing opportunities, providing planning samples, providing assessment organizers. You decide. Help the learners to relate the product to the real world. Help them see how the ideas and the skills they learn in the English class and at school also are used in the real world to assess real issues. Encourage them to use and synthesize multiple sources of information. I have noticed that students, particularly teenagers, they seem to not know how to use certain skills. And then you tell them, but listen, you do this in your own language, suppose in geography. Ah, yes, teacher, but that's not in English. And so what? That is, they have like airtight compartments in their heads, yes, inside their heads, and these airtight compartments do not communicate. So you had to show them how the things or the skills that they learn in one subject can be applied to other subjects, because sometimes they don't realize. So this is something that sometimes we need to teach them, yes? Provide templates or organizers to support the struggling learners. Sometimes giving them graphic organizers to organize their ideas after brainstorming, helping them plan. These organizers may help them plan the different stages of a project, etc. Also, mini milestones for sections of the product. Instead of letting them work through the whole project, for example, and then have a look at what they have done at the very end, and them finding themselves having to change lots of things in the project, establish milestones along the way. These mini milestones will help them assess what they are doing, make small changes, and then proceed. And also, it will help them see small wins along the way. And also analyze models of effective products from previous years or from other classes, anonymous exemplars that they can see as models of good quality work, yes? And that where they can see the success criteria applied. Now, just to finish off, as Piaget reflected, the heartbreaking difficulty in pedagogy is that the best methods are also the most difficult ones. Although managing a differentiated classroom isn't always easy, I think that the benefits are worth the challenge. And if you will allow me, I'm going to give you a few tips for managing a differentiated class. First of all, have a strong rationale for creating a differentiated classroom and share it with students and parents so that they understand your views on what you are doing in the classroom. If you share these with them, if you explain to them the rationale, they are quite likely to support you. Begin at a pace that is comfortable for you. I'm sure that many of you are already making frequent adjustments in the curriculum, in instruction, to allow for all learners, that is, to cater for learner differences in the classroom. Maybe with just a few additional touches, you are able to move to full differentiation. If you feel less confident, take small steps, one thing at a time. Select a few low preparation strategies and use them consistently throughout the year. And then choose, for example, 2 or 3 high prep approaches per unit or quarter and add them to your repertoire. But don't try to differentiate everything in a unit. Sometimes it's not necessary. And you have to pick those things that are really necessary to differentiate. Also, time the activities, time differentiated activities. When designing tasks, remember that the time allotted for a task should be a bit less than the attention span of the students who work on that task. And also that advanced learners usually have extended attention spans. Create and deliver instructions carefully. Instead of giving the whole class multiple sets of instructions, give them cards with instructions, differentiated instructions. And use bullet points, for example, and simple language. Also, create a system to assign students to groups. Sometimes you will decide that the group that is, you will decide who is in the group. Some other times you will allow the students a choice. But create systems that help you make that really quickly. Also, get help from the students. That is, make sure they understand when it's okay to come to you for help and when it's not okay to interrupt. Yes, and agree on some class rules. Have a plan for fast finishers. Convey that you understand, for example, with these fast finishers, convey that you understand that they are competent, but you want to see work that shows their aspiration to quality. Promote on-task behavior and convey to students that this will help them do better quality work. Give them responsibility for their learning. This will help the classroom management become more effective. And also engage the students in talking about classroom procedures and expectations. Sometimes we don't have conversations, quite usually we don't have conversations with our students about what their experience is individually and as a group. And it's important to know, because in that way we can ourselves make adjustments to our teaching. And last but not least, plan, and if you're teaching with other teachers the same levels, share work with your colleagues. Don't try to do it all alone, because you're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to give it up. So let's be practical. So now, thank you so much for your attention. I hope you have found this presentation useful. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you very much. What an amazing session.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, people are thanking you in the chat box. And I have noticed a question in the middle of your session, but somehow you answered that question because it was related to chat GPT and how it would affect coursebook writers and textbook writers, and you somehow covered it in the second part of your presentation. But Azra Hocam, if you still want to ask the question, I can. Do you want me to ask the same question? Because I think Annie has already mentioned that it requires human touch.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean,
Yeah, that's right.
you cannot just give it to Chat GPT and
No,
rest.
no. I mean, that's at least that's the way I work with. Sometimes I work with ChatGPT.
Yeah,
For example, I use it mostly when I have to make a summary of something that I want to use. But then I always read again. I always put in my personal touch. I use ChatGPT to do, let's say, the first piece of work.
yeah, the first
Then,
draft, and then
yes,
you work
yes.
on it.
But then I work on it. I mean,
Mm.
otherwise, it takes all the creativity away from you. Besides,
Yeah,
one has one's own style of doing things. Yes,
yeah,
and at, I mean, uh, what I see is that sometimes on purpose, I ask ChatGPT to do some things, and it doesn't do what I want them to do.
yeah,
Uh, it doesn't, even though I mean, sometimes it takes me longer to give it the instructions in order to get a good result
I hear you.
than
Yeah,
sitting down and writing it myself.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And besides, it will
And
have my own
you
touch.
know the context.
That's
You
right.
know the learners.
That's right.
ChatGPT can't, because
Absolutely.
it's not like human
Absolutely.
intelligence, it's
Absolutely.
artificial intelligence. So, teacher is again, as usual, the main figure.
Of course.
ChatGPT can be a very good assistant, but
Yeah.
can never replace
No, it can
human
help you save,
creativity.
yeah, it can save you some time
Mm-hmm,
when you
mm-hmm,
are doing
mm-hmm,
some things.
mm-hmm,
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
For example, the other day I was trying to find, and I eventually found an article on a specific topic, and I needed a shorter version because it was a very long article. So what I did, I copied the article, I put it in ChatGPT, and I said, please summarize the main ideas of this article in X number of words.
Mm-hmm.
So I read the article and I looked at the summary and I started making changes to the summary. Because,
Yeah,
okay, it was the key points according to ChatGPT, but it was not the key points I wanted.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
true.
you need critical thinking, you need to revise, you need to put in your style. It can
Mm-hmm,
save you
mm-hmm.
some time at some point, but
Yeah, sure, sure. And I have also noticed that since it does not have the necessary pedagogical background, it cannot make the necessary adjustments when it comes to writing for children
that's
or
right.
teenagers, because you understand psychology, but
Yeah.
what it does is just to scan all the materials produced so far and
Mm-hmm.
kind of steal
Yeah.
other people's ideas and
Yeah.
sentences.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen certain stories supposedly written by ChatGPT for a specific age group, for a specific language level, like A2 level. But the story is so complicated. It's definitely like B2 level
That's
for
right.
14, 15-year-old kids.
That's right. Yes.
So definitely here, of course, I'm talking about a well-trained teacher who never stops improving themselves. I'm not talking about those lazy teachers who come
Oh
to the
no.
class unprepared.
No, 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 of course
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
But I think, I mean, we have been talking about the use of ChatGPT with a colleague who is a coach, and and talking. I mean, I can see the usefulness of ChatGPT, but some teachers are really afraid, and I say, what I think that what we need to do is teach our students uh, to think critically when they have a text written by ChatGPT, to check, because The other day, a friend of mine, he's not a teacher of English, he's not involved in teaching. He is a computer engineer. And just to challenge ChatGPT, he posed a question and he said, okay, write me an article about, it was something very specific that both of us know a lot about, and it was about a particular basketball team in Argentina in our hometown in the 1970s, which was the basis of our national basketball team. He sent it to me. He said, have a laugh. It was incredible because it mixed up basketball players, football players, mixed up dates. I mean, it was a salad where it put lots of different things. And I saw the first two names and I said, okay, so far so good. But then I started looking down at the names and I said, what? And we couldn't stop laughing because we said, and this is artificial intelligence. Of course, it's artificial, it's not intelligence.
Yeah. Well, people say there is human intelligence and human stupidity.
Of course.
So the same goes for artificial intelligence. If we have artificial intelligence, we have artificial stupidity. Right?
Right. I mean, the thing is, it's not ChatGPT invents unreal references. Absolutely. Yes, that's another thing. Some people think that they can write a paper, a university paper with references, and then you check the references and they don't exist.
They don't exist, yeah. Yes.
So
we had a wonderful session with Brent Warner. It is on our YouTube channel. If you're interested, I'm the audience as well. If you're interested, please give it a watch. It's wonderful. He also mentions how we should treat ChatGPT very carefully. So I have one question that comes to my mind. In our national situation, I'm not going to say assessment, but I'm going to use the word evaluation because assessment hasn't taken its place yet in Turkey. Not yet, unfortunately. The way we evaluate our students is like we evaluate them as a group. They never get evaluated or assessed, hopefully one day, as an individual. So they never get formative assessment. It's always summative.
Right.
So it is, do you think students will feel that this kind of teaching, learning, differentiated, will feel fair for them? Because some students are going to have a different task. Well, the same task in a different manner.
In a different manner, yes.
So if, for example, I evaluate that accordingly, but I evaluate the other group according to their performance and they get higher grades, do you think they will feel that it's unfair?
That is a very good question, because here we are not talking about differentiating the assessment. We are talking about differentiating the activities in order for the students to reach the same objectives.
The same goals and objectives.
The same goals. Okay. We are not talking about differentiating
evaluation is the same.
That's right.
The ways of getting there will be different.
The way of getting there is slightly different. Different. And again, that's why it's so important to share the rationale for what you do with the students and with the parents, so that they understand this. Because it's not that you are being harder with the better students, let's say, because you know that they can do it, and you are lenient with the ones that are weaker. No. No, it's a difference in the kind of support that you are giving them,
Yeah.
but you are not assessing them in different ways because they should all reach the same
objectives.
That's
Yes.
right. That's right.
So, well, every now and then I need to play the devil's advocate, you know. So
No,
I
no,
need to ask these questions
no,
so that the
that's
audience can also understand what we're
yeah.
talking about here.
It's a very good
So,
question. Yeah.
the objectives that students achieve are the same. So you
That's
don't
right.
need to differentiate assessment or evaluation. They can be given the same evaluation device. Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that for us.
And that's very important to clarify because this is one of the misconceptions about differentiated instruction. So it's important to be clear with that.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions in the chat box. My dear colleagues, do you have any questions? Or you may want to say something and make a remark, a comment, maybe. You can raise your hand and, you know, join, contribute. You're more than welcome. Otherwise, I'm going to say
Thank you
goodbye.
for your contributions, Azra.
Very much for amazing session, Annie.
Oh, thank you.
I enjoyed a lot.
Thank you very much.
No. Okay then. So I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you very much, my dear colleague Annie. It was really a pleasure to have you with us here. Hopefully, we can get together again.
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
this time talk about a different topic.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Because yeah, I mean, our audience is always open to learning different things, you know, polishing up what they already know, and you are a wonderful speaker.
Oh, thank you.
Even in my situation, I did understand everything with my fever and headache.
Oh, I hope you get better. Take a lot of rest this weekend.
I will. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. This weekend is going to be a hard weekend for us all here in our country. Please pray for us.
Why?
We have elections.
Oh,
yeah.
We also have elections on Sunday, but it's not the general election. We are having municipal elections and provincial elections. And yes, just keep our fingers crossed. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All the best for you, for all of you.
Thank you.
Have
My dear colleagues,
weekend.
Thank you. As usual, I don't know how to thank you guys for joining us, making this session an incredible one. Hopefully, we will get together again next week on Friday with a different guest. Take very good care of. Go and vote, guys.
That's very important. Yes.
Please. Love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.